to a series of conversations called My Lourdes Story, where I'll be talking to various people about their Lourdes experience and what Lourdes means to them. I'm Joan Cahill, and I've spent a lot of time over the last few years in Lourdes, a place that is very special to me. Today I am talking to John Arnold. John is from just outside Fermoy in County Cork, and he travels to Lourdes with the Cloyne Diocesan Pilgrimage. Thank you so much, John, for agreeing to talk to me today.
No problem, John. Delighted to do it, yeah.
So, John, the first time you went to Lourdes, you said was in 1971, and you went with your mum. Will you tell us a little bit about this journey and the story behind you going?
Yeah, John, my father was a TB patient in the late 1950s and early 60s. In 1961, he was hospitalised. He was often hospitalised. I was only 4. But I think there was a good expectation that he was going to recover. So himself and Mem had planned to go to Lourdes in 1962. The passport got and all, and they were going to go to Lourdes. But he died quite unexpectedly in September 1961. As I said, I was only 4, so I don't really remember him. So my mum was left in with 5 children under 9 years of age. So in the mid-60s then, mid to late 60s, according as each one of the 5 of us, excuse me, it was about 10 or 11, she took us to Lourdes. So my turn came in, I thought first was 1970, but recently I found out it was 1971 when I was 11. So we went, the pilgrimage used to go on that time was organised, I think, by Casey Travel in Cork, and it used to be a short pilgrimage, usually around Patrick's Day, leaving Cork very early of a morning, maybe at 7 or 8 o'clock, arriving in Lourdes at 11 o'clock, based in a hotel, but we weren't staying there. You had different ceremonies after dinner, torchlight procession, all-night vigil, mass during the night, mass at, I think it was 6 or 7. I found the itinerary there lately, mass at 6 or 7 o'clock next morning, breakfast in the hotel, back to the grotto, and more ceremonies and stations, and leaving Lourdes that evening and coming home. So literally you were away about a little over 36 hours. So that was 71. And the rest of the family went in their turn. And my mother kept going over the years. She was a great devotee of Lourdes, and she went to Medjugorje too. She had returned from Lourdes in September 1996, and she took ill quite suddenly, and she died. I actually found her dead in bed in the morning in 1996, 25 years ago. And she was just back, as I said, from Lourdes. And then in 2007, I reached the magic age of 50, and I was talking about doing different things to kind of back that year. I wrote a book, and I recorded some music that I had recorded from people. So I just said around, I think it was April or May that year, I might have seen it advertised, you know what, will I go back to Lourdes after all these years to see what it's like? I had only kind of vague enough memories of my first trip. So in 2007, at very short notice, I booked on the Cloyne pilgrimage and went back again. So 1971 and 2007, that was the gap. And, I've gone back every year since.
Oh, it's lovely to go with a group as well, John. And I know you're a brancardier, and all the brancardiers and handmaidens, they work so hard when you're there in Lourdes. But isn't it such a privilege to be there with the assisted pilgrims?
Yeah, and people say, God, you work hard. And I was saying, no. Work is something different. That isn't work, what we do there. It's just an honour and a privilege. You feel honoured to be able to do that kind of service to people. And, for a lot of people that go as assisted pilgrims, and I've got to know some of them, for a lot of them, maybe those that are housebound, those some might be living in hospitals or nursing homes, for not of them, it's their only outing in the year, it's their only holiday, and to see the joy, satisfaction, the pleasure, the fun, the happiness that they get there for the 4 or 5 days, it's just unbelievable. So like when we'd come back tired and people say, God, you worked very hard. I say, no, it's not work, it's a hard thing, because it's not like any other thing that you do for the rest of the year when you're at home. There's nothing else really could compare with it. It's an honour and a privilege to be able to do it and to be able to help in some small way. And I mean, like no matter what age brancardiers are, if they're 18 or if we have some going to nearly 90, there's always tasks they can do. And the task might be pushing a wheelchair or pushing a buggy, or it could be just giving you a glass of water to somebody, or it could be just having a chat with somebody in a quiet corner, and they're all the things that make up the service that the brancardiers and the handmaidens do, and it's always done very cheerily and very happy with a smile on both the giver and the receiver's face.
And your youth group as well, John, the Red T-shirt Army as they're called, they're a great group of young people and they add so much to the pilgrimage, don't they?
They do, and you'd come back from Lourdes. My God, you'd hear so much negativity often about young people, and that the young people don't care, and young people are this and that. And my God, when you'd be there and you'd see how those 60 or 70 and it's not just with Klein, they go with other pilgrimages, and the way they give themselves selflessly, and I mean they're doing things over there during that week they might never do at home. They could be cleaning floors, they could be cleaning toilets, they could be talking to people who are not able to talk back, they could be holding the hand of somebody that's very ill, they could be out in the rain or they could be out in the beating sunshine, and they're just at the beck and command of those in charge of them, and the bond that they build up there again. And we're looking inclined that a certain amount of them are returning now as adult, young adult brancardiers and young leaders, but I mean, they're a credit to their families and they're a credit to their schools, and they would give a person great hope, not necessarily about, would you say, the organised church, but they would give a great hope about Christianity and about the way the Christian feeling is some part of their ethos, the ethos of giving. Oh yeah, they're absolutely brilliant.
And John, I know people have so many different experiences when they're in Lourdes, but you had a particular experience when you met a lady from Belgium. Will you tell us a little bit about what happened that day?
Yeah, John, it was Sunday, the 3rd of June, 2018, and the International Mass was on down in the Underground Basilica, and 3 or 4 of us had taken invalids down there, and then we had gone to the English Mass over in the Church of St. Damien and Cosmas, and we were just going back into the Ecoy. I'd say just maybe for a cup of tea or something, 4 of us, and the place was very, very quiet because there was thousands, obviously, at the Underground Mass and the Underground Basilica Mass. We were just going into the Ecoy to go up. I think we were on the 3rd floor that year, and the 4 of us were just approaching the lift, and the lift just opened, and the 3 lads in front of me were just gone in, and I was just about to step into the lift, and the next thing I felt a hand on my shoulder. When I looked behind, there was a very thin, miserable, frail-looking, youngish, middle-aged woman, and she just put her hand in shoulder and she said, "Could I have a word with you?" And I said, "Yeah, talk away, girl." And she just said, "Privately." And the lads are with me. I kind of looked at them and they looked at me, and I said, "It's all right, lads." And she go up in the lift, and they went up, and so I sat down in one of the blue chairs there on the ground floor, and she sat down very gingerly in another blue chair, and she started talking to me. She told me she was from Belgium and she had good English, but every now and then she'd break out crying and sobbing, and she was very, very thin and miserable. But her life story was that she had a lot of mental health issues and physical health. She was in a lot of pain, and she had left her home in Belgium before Christmas in 2017, got rid of her passport, destroyed her passport, threw her phone away in the sand dune somewhere in Belgium, and travelled by train to Lourdes, and had lived since that 6 or 8 months up on the hillside in near the city of the poor up above Lourdes. Now, she was telling me all this, but I didn't know whether this was truth or lies. She could be trying to wind me up, and the thought going through my mind all the time, this is a scam. But anyhow, she kept crying, and she said she needed help, and she told me she was suicidal. She said she had tried to commit suicide by starving herself to death. I'd say she was only 5 or 6 stone weight, and I was inclined to believe her, but still think it could be a scam. So I said the only thing I could do, she was looking, could you get a bed in the hospital? And I said, it's not as simple. But I said, look, what I could do is I take you over to the information centre inside the gate, and they would help. So I got a wheelchair for her, and I said, but she said, no, I won't go in the wheelchair. She said, I'll walk with you. And again, a strange woman, 2 of us in a strange place, link arms. So I was a bit reluctant. So I took the wheelchair back in, and I went upstairs, and I said, my friend said, lads, look. They said, look, leave her alone. She's only out for scam. But I kept looking down at her sitting below her. She was there for about 15 minutes, so I went back down. And I said, look, I'll take you over to the information centre. So the people were coming back from the International Mass at that stage. And I asked 3 people, like Christ, on the road to Emmaus. A lot of people kind of refused me because they were busy and this and that and the other. But eventually a friend of mine, Caroline, said, yeah, I'll walk with her. So we linked arms and we walked very slowly across the domain over towards the Basilica. And as we were walking, we were both pelted with questions, and she was answering back. And she had indeed had a very, very troubled history. And by the time we got over to the domain, Caroline, my friend, had a smartphone, and the girl's name was Fiona Marie. She gave her surname, and in a few seconds, Caroline was able to Google it. And indeed, what she was telling us was true. She was presumed dead in Belgium, and she had been sought by the fire brigade and the police and the ambulance service there, and her picture was up on Interpol, and they were looking for her. But she had just disappeared into Lourdes and didn't want to be seen. So we talked to her, and eventually we met a priest, a Father Paul from her own country, and she just said she wanted help. And we asked her, was it okay to contact her family? And she said, okay, eventually. And we contacted her mother to tell her she was still alive. And of course, she was delighted. And to cut a long story short, we eventually got accommodation for her that night in a convent there in Lourdes. And she came to thank me the next day. And we came home, and she continued to thank me. She went back to her own family, and she was reunited with them. And I often think since, was it just a pure coincidence that she put her hand on my shoulder that day? Or was it some kind of a Lourdes miracle? I just don't know.
It was in a way, John, really, wasn't it? I mean, you were obviously there at the right place at the right time, really.
Yeah, it's just one of those amazing things that happens in Lourdes that you'd never ever forget, you know.
And John, I know you go with the Cloyne pilgrimage, but you also go to Lourdes in the winter time when it's much quieter. It must be so different from being there in the height of the season.
Yeah, I started going with Cloyne in 2007, and I've gone every year since, except last year, obviously, when we had no pilgrimage, and unfortunately we weren't this year. So I think it was in 2018, I just decided I wonder what it would be like in the winter time. So each year from 2008 up till 2019, I go for 4 or 5, maybe from 3 to 6 days on my own, usually in mid-November or maybe late November, early December. And it's just a complete different experience. I travel usually via London on my own, nothing organised, and I stay in a Spanish convent above near the parish church. And Lourdes is very, very quiet. Shops closed, pubs, restaurants, vast majority hotels are closed, just a few open. And Lourdes is just so still, so quiet, so calm. And I just love those few days. I know, I do feel guilty. I do feel guilty being there then, because you have no duties to fulfill. You have no work to do. You have no service to offer. But still, I just love those days. I walk, and I don't talk, which is unusual for me. I don't talk. And I just love those couple of days. I usually walk out to Bartres one of the days. I do the high and low stations, the bats, go to 5 o'clock mass in the Port Clares every evening. And it's just absolutely heavenly. And people would often ring me and they'd say, John, it must be very lonesome there. And I said, yes, I'm all alone, but I'm not lonesome, because when you go down at the grotto there, and I've often had Our Lady and St. Bernadette to my own of an afternoon or a night. There might be no one there. Sometimes if you happen to be there the 8th of December on the feast day, there'll be a big crowd, but generally that time of year is very quiet. And I've been very lucky. I've had beautiful weather, and it snowed one year I was there, which again was a beautiful experience. And where I stay, that is 40 minutes of a walk down to the grotto. And again, that's fine, because I walk down in the morning and get 10 o'clock mass, and I go up and down a couple of times during the day. And it's just an absolute heavenly experience.
It sounds like it just gives you a bit of time to recharge the batteries, John. And can I just ask?
Yeah.
I know the Cloyne Dice had a very special bond with Sister Mary Therese in the Poor Clare Convent. Of course, Sister Mary Therese was a Cork woman herself. And as far as I remember, she went over and worked in a shop across the road from the Poor Clare Convent, and then entered the convent then when she was in her early 30s. Am I getting that story right?
Yeah, no, she was only in her 20s, because she was there for the 50 or 60 years. Yeah, obviously, when I started going in 2007, that time it would be easier getting an appointment with the Pope or the President of America to talk to, because everybody from Cloyne that were going with years were so used to calling to. But I met her, I think, maybe the first time in June 2008. And then when I was going to winter visits, I was calling to see her, and she was a lovely lady. I mean, she had connections with Cork City, with Mallow and with Kilworth, and she'd be always inquiring. Now, her brother used to send her the front page of the Cork Examiner every single on Saturday's Cork Examiner, so she was very au fait with the news from home. I couldn't speak French, but when you'd hear her, the way she could go from French into her Cork accent, she was just a beautiful person, and I used to just love the conversations with her. And then, unfortunately, old age crept up on her, and she died a few years ago. And ever since she died, when I go into winter, I always get the key of the little cemetery below by the bridge where she's buried, and I go down there and I spend time. And I often sing the Lourdes hymn, and I'd sing The Banks of My Own Lovely Lee at the side of her grave, because she was just such a pure person. And in the last 2 years, going back in with our main pilgrimage in June, we get the key again. You have to get permission from the key, and we take a group down there just to stand at her grave and talk there. And like the mass, like I said, in the evenings, in the winter time, in the Potlairs, is just lovely. And every time I'm in there, you'd be thinking about her like she was the only Irish nun there, and she lies in the cemetery now. As people cross over the river, cross that busy bridge where there's thousands, hundreds of thousands crossing every day, and to think she's buried in the cemetery just literally alongside that bridge, it's one of my favourite spots there.
I visited her a few times myself when I was there, and I was always fascinated. Like, I know she was in an enclosed order, but she knew everything about everything, didn't she, John?
Absolutely, yeah. She and of course she was lucky then that she had so many Irish visitors, and they kept her up to date. And it was ironic and beautiful and fitting that she actually died when the Cork and Ross pilgrimage were there. So it was Bishop John Buckley set her funeral mass. So even though she was far, far away from her home when she died, while the funeral mass was on, and the funeral, she was surrounded by people from her native area, from her native county, which is something that she would really, really have loved. As she was a saint, a pure saint of a woman, yeah.
Now, John, I remember reading, I can't remember where, but I read that you described the preparation for going to Lourdes with a great Irish word. Now, I hope I pronounced this right. Sketamini. Now, I did look up the meaning of this word, and it said rapturous excitement at going, which really does describe it, John, doesn't it? The excitement.
Yeah, that's it. And here we are now on today's. We're just coming up to the Easter period now, and normally, like from an organisational point of view here in the diocese of Cloyne is divided into different deaneries, and each of the deaneries would be organising their own assisted pilgrims and doing church gate collections and everything. And in reality, while I'm very involved in the J and have been involved with the J for years and years, and I would be normally attending matches of a normal year kind of on a daily basis and meetings a couple of times a week. But I can tell you, for the months of April and May, being Sketamini or Montower, like this sense of anticipation and excitement would be there, because you'd be just so looking forward to meeting everybody above in the airport and Lourdes on the first day, and having just a wonderful experience again and again. It pains me sometimes not to think about it because we haven't been there, but the sense of excitement and just when you meet all those people at the airport, then the first evening over Lourdes, you meet people you've met for years, you meet new people, you see old people who are there for the first time, then you see the excited faces of the youngsters, and then that special moment when you go down the slope and you stand at the statue of the Crown Virgin, which is so special to me, and that's your first encounter with Lourdes, and then to go around the corner and to go to visit the grotto and to kneel. There's a little tiles under one of the seats now. There's a tile there which it says it marks the actual spot where St. Bernadette knelt on the first morning on the 11th of February when she saw Our Lady, and all those things filled me with excitement. And we'd always say when you'd come home in June, you'd be looking back on it from that till Christmas, and come Christmas then we'd be looking forward to going again for the following year. So it's just a tremendous feeling of excitement, and rapture is the only word I could say for it, really,
It's such a special place, John. You really feel as if you're part of something special with your Lourdes family, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And it isn't just a Cloyne pilgrimage, but I know, and unfortunately, I remember a man called Jim Conway. He was a third guard. He was one of the people who was going when I was going first, and he died a few years since. And I was saying to him, another man called Tony O'Brien, he was going for years in a wheelchair, and I said to him one time there a few years before he died, I said, Tony, isn't it tough being part of the Lourdes family, because the more and more you get to know people, the harder it is then when any of those people pass away. And I've been at more funerals in the last couple of years, and I started a little tradition then myself a few years ago when Jim died, and that is that after Jim's funeral, I took a stone. He's buried in County Tipperary. I took a stone from his grave, and I kept that little stone in a purse in my pocket. And the next time we went to Lourdes, I placed that stone after a little ceremony in the river over in Lourdes. In other words, uniting the person at home with Lourdes forever. And we have that little ceremony nearly every year, because unfortunately there's often someone dies. And that lovely reading from Ecclesiastes, there's a time to dance and a time to sing, and a time to be happy and a time to cry, a time to talk and a time to be silent. There's a time to gather up stones, and there's a time to throw stones away. And we always feel by placing the stone in the river, it isn't as if we're saying goodbye, but we're bringing something from their grave, from their place, their resting place in Ireland, and putting it into that river in Lourdes across from the grotto, just near where St. Bernadette stood the last evening. She said goodbye to Lourdes, and that little stone will remain in the bed of that river forever and ever, as long as the water flows.
That's an absolutely beautiful way to remember somebody. It really is. John,
yeah, it is.
It's been absolutely lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for talking to me today. Can I ask you, John, if you would leave us with a thought for the day before we sign off?
Okay. People say, why is Lourdes so special? What proof have you that Lourdes is so special? And I have said this to so many people. I have yet to meet someone who has gone to Lourdes that doesn't want to return. That sums it up for me.
John, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.